we're going to see them become more complicated, obviously, as time goes on.
Hello, everybody. Hello, listeners. Hello, viewers. I want to welcome you to our first episode of On-Chain Attention Podcast, where I am your host, Sergey Kiklevich. I'm a co-founder and CEO of YOLO. It's a company focused on the creator economy. We're working on all kinds of interesting things to provide tools and insights and all kinds of other things for the digital creators. And the purpose of our podcast is to invite guests like Kelly Miller, also known as Crypto Kelly, whom I've met at the Blockchain World Expo in Turkey, in Istanbul, almost a month ago. And we just hit it off. He's a very, very interesting character, an expert in his field. And I think his journey will be very interesting for our listeners and viewers to tap into. The four focal points of our podcast in general are blockchain innovation, attention economy, also creator economy, and all kinds of interesting marketing trends. Now, Kelly, to introduce him, he is an artist in heart and also by trade. And he is somebody who took blockchain innovation seriously X amount of years ago. He'll tell you about his journey and became quite a shaker and mover, an influencer, an innovator in the space as well. And he's a very, very humble person as well. So, Kelly, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being the guest today. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey from being an artist to being in the blockchain space.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate the intro. I just think of myself primarily as a researcher and an explorer. I'm somebody who tries to dive into things and learn as much as I can and document and share and make people understand that, to me, blockchain is all about making your whole life and transporting it into another ecosystem, another way of thinking, another way of transacting, another way of creating, another way of doing everything that you do in real life, but on-chain in a digital way. And so I know that's very overwhelming and kind of hard to visualize for most people. So that's kind of the reason why I started sharing and documenting my journey just as someone who's learning, because I realized that this space, due to its speculative nature, has a lot of technologically and financially capable people, but they're not educators and they're not people who understand how to convince people or show them the benefits necessarily. Like, they're really good builders, but maybe they don't know how to present things as in a way that really speaks to people's hearts. So that's kind of what I try to do using my creative background, is document and write and research and kind of dive into each section of the ecosystem to kind of give people a cross section of everything that happens and everything that is usable right now and the way things are going in the future. And I kind of use my creative lens to see the blockchain space and try to get people to imagine the world that we can have using this technology and the possibilities, instead of getting overwhelmed by all the new information and language, you know.
Hey, I appreciate that about you very much. The person who has gotten himself into this whole, as I call it, a blockchain jungle, where the innovation is happening at a very rapid pace. And for an average user of technology in general, I'm not talking about blockchain, I'm talking about internet, mobile technologies, apps, things like that, all kinds of things, Internet of Things. Blockchain is oftentimes this thing that is hard to understand. And here you are, an artist by trade and in heart, you're a musician, right?
Mm-hmm.
You, at some point, recognized something in this whole blockchain jungle that must have screamed a possibility of some sort, an opportunity of some sort to you. Can you recall when and how that happened? Because you were on the other side of the fence at some point, right? You weren't active in the industry. how come? What drew you into this industry? And then, the rest is history.
I first heard about Bitcoin in 2012 on my way to school. At the time, I was going to college for music business, and I heard someone talking about Bitcoin, and it seemed like this interesting idea that appealed to the kind of the idea of my psyche, where I try to imagine how things can be better rather than the way they are. So I loved that idea, but it didn't make very much sense to me, and it seemed really hard to even engage into the space. So 9 years later, I'm here and I'm trying, and 2021 was really me understanding the way that the world worked. I left the US in 2020 because I started to see the changes that are going to happen in the world through Corona. And to me, I kept seeing people who were just trying to make sure that they were just waiting for the world to come back to normal. But for me, it was a symbol that the world is not going back to normal, and we have to change with it. And that this kind of opened up a lot of windows to a bunch of different places and ways of thinking that maybe would have had a harder time being accepted by people. But people saw how fragile all of the systems that run the world work. And that to me was a symbol, okay, I need to change my whole life. I need to go to a place I've never been. I need to really put myself in an uncomfortable position to change in the way that's necessary for me. And moving was a part of it, and changing my entire environment. And then also getting into crypto was kind of this way for me to use my creative skills as a musician in NFTs, because I saw, oh, here's a way for us to capture the revenue back as an artist and not hand everything, all of our IP and all of our publishing rights and licensing all over to streaming, which doesn't really pay anything. And I felt like NFTs were a great way for us to kind of build community around our content and our art in a very specific way. And then also the NFTs themselves having royalties embedded made a lot of sense to me as an artist. It's okay, great. I just have this digital file that's literally an MP3 or a wave or whatever. And it has royalties attached to it wherever I send it on the blockchain. So that was really appealing. And then I started to go even further down because I started to see that there's a very professional industry here, that there wasn't just a bunch of scams and people trying to trick people into giving them their money. There was actual industry being built. And so that was really intriguing to me. And I got introduced to a bunch of communities through NFTs to where I could see the different levels of the professionalism of the space. So some people are just there to make money. They don't care. They just have this picture or this song or this art, whatever it is, and they just want to sell it for another higher price. But then there were also people who were saying, how can we use this to build community around a product and use it to build a core group of users and have those users be like the basis for our feedback model for our product, or to help us grow with very core group loyal people to push the product forward and the company forward as a whole. And once I understood that bigger picture, it really made a lot of sense to me. So I kept learning, I kept trying new things. I learned a lot about DeFi and then about other random technologies like prediction markets and as many things as I could. And to me, it was like, okay, why am I doing this? I want to do it because I want to teach people what it really is. Because just like me, they've been listening to the media and other sources the last 14 years now about how crypto and Bitcoin is a scam. So I wanted to show people that, yes, those do happen, but at the same time, there's this really fast growing industry that actually has use. So that was kind of like the beginning of my journey.
Well, that's quite a loaded answer where you brought up quite a few interesting points. We're gathered here because we want to help other people better understand certain things. To you, right, certain terminology, DeFi, NFTs, other things are, second nature. But initially, I'm sure you had your level of struggle in fully understanding in order to embrace something and speak up about it out loud. So for all the artists out there, why should they care about NFTs? In also layman's terms, can you try to explain what are the NFTs? What is the underlying technology? And what are some of the use cases that are already available? And where do you see it evolving? So a loaded question, but if you can just really try to explain as an artist, as a researcher, as an educator, so that an average person who has not done this yet would walk away with, I got to dig into this more. This is very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I try to explain blockchain to people is it uses the same technology as torrenting. And everybody in the world knows what torrenting is. It's Napster and uTorrent and LimeWire and all of those things that we all used. They use that same technology. So it's a group of computers all sharing files and pulling little pieces of those files from all of the networked computers all grouped together. And that's essentially, in like a simple form, a blockchain, but it also takes a snapshot of everything that's happening on the chain and records it. And mostly on most chains, it's a public source where anybody can see what is happening in each specific transaction. So it's verifiable and everyone can see exactly what's happening on the chain at any given time. So that idea was very appealing to me and to a lot of people, because with your banks, you don't really know what's going on there. You put your money in your account and it might be there. They might use it to buy other stuff. You don't know.
Correct.
And even 401ks and stuff too. It's like you just put your money into the fund and hope that they do whatever is best for you. But with this kind of technology, you can actually look on the blockchain at every single transaction and you can see where it goes. So I loved that idea, and that
so trackability,
very transparent. Yeah, it's
gotcha.
It's transparency. And so with NFTs, they are taking MP3s, waves, AIF files, like all of the audio files or any file really. It can be MP4, PDF. It can all go on the chain, and then it can be stored on chain. There's a difference between like an IPFS, which is interplanetary file storage, where it's like cloud computing, but on chain. So instead of like Google's servers holding the file, it's again a decentralized network of computers all holding little pieces of the file. And so your song exists in multiple places in little pieces all at the same time. And then this NFT is kind of representation of that on the chain. And so when you move it through what are called wallets. And it's just like your wallet in your hand. You're sending it from one place to another. And baked into the NFT are a bunch of things called smart contracts, which are basically little programs that run on their own with just one little input. So in a basic term, it's almost like a little robot that just has one little function and it just runs that every time it has the same input. And so the way that I explain blockchain in general is like, if you think of it as a mall, each network, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, they're malls. And inside of the mall are stores, merchandise stores, there's little exchange offices, there are stores where you can go buy things and you transact with the currency of that blockchain in the mall, and that is BTC on Bitcoin and Ether on ETH and Sol on Solana. So it's like the currency that each mall uses. And here's where it gets a little tricky, because you can't think of it just like a dollar. It is a dollar, but it's also like a dollar with computer power attached to it. So the more that you have, what's called validators, the computers that run the network, they have more Solana, so they have more currency, and they can run the network better. So the more currency that the computers have that run the network, the more efficient the entire blockchain is. And that's why Bitcoin is the very oldest least efficient one because it's the first and it's using older technology and the code base is also older and less efficient, but it makes it very stable as well because they were really smart the way they built it. So people are trying to make them faster and cheaper, and that's like the way that everything kind of works right now. But there's always this idea of what's going to change in the future and how are things going to evolve over time as hardware and software gets better and cheaper.
Gotcha. So I want to build a little bit more on your answer here. Ourselves as a company at YOLO, we're constantly looking at the landscape of smart contracts, and they have been getting better. Use cases have been getting more interesting, more fair for the marketplace, for the artists, for the digital creators of different kinds. Doesn't matter what type of content they're focused on. I'm curious for you as an artist and for you as an entrepreneur, because you also invest in certain things. Doesn't matter the scale at which, but even on your Twitter, right, it does say that you're an investor. Where is your mind about smart contracts? How important are they? And where do you see the trend going with the smart contracts on different blockchains?
We're going to see them become more complicated, obviously, as time goes on. And I think that even Bitcoin, it didn't have smart contracts, but now people are building ways for smart contracts to run on top of Bitcoin, because every blockchain essentially functions a very similar way. So when you have something like smart contracts that allows programs to just run on their own, that makes a lot more sense for every blockchain to have something like that, whether it's running an online bank, essentially like a DeFi protocol, a DEX, as it's called, decentralized exchange, or it's an NFT marketplace that takes all the NFTs and sends them, buys them, and sells them, or allows you to mint them, which is done by a smart contract as well. So I think we're seeing other things like tokenized real estate, which will require like kind of complex smart contracts, and they will be legally backed by like governments and other entities that actually have like legal authority in the real world. So those will be much more complex smart contracts as well. And I think we're going to keep evolving from the smart contracts not just existing on the blockchain, but having some real world application, real world use, and real world legitimacy as well. And we're already seeing that in certain places, especially with what are called real world asset tokenization. That excites me a lot, because there are several big sectors in global economy that are primed to, I guess, change would be the right word. I don't know if it's going to be transform. I don't know if it's get revolutionized or disrupted, but just change, right? And I do see certain trends evolving as well. I'm curious in terms of the more artistic industry, right? Music, the world of arts, the more motion picture and things like that. What is one of the better, I guess, blockchains that favors an artist, and why? I guess it depends on what the artist is looking for.
Go ahead and if you could explain, right, a couple of scenarios here, that would be very helpful.
Sure. So Ethereum is the main, it's like the second largest blockchain. So it's been around since 2014 is when the white paper first came out, and 2016, 2017 was when things really started getting built on that chain. And so it's had a while to develop and grow. And that's where a lot of the considered old school people on the blockchain are. And all the old school NFT artists. And actually the first person to make an NFT engine was a technical person who was also an artist named Hashlips. And he created the first engine that allowed NFTs to be created on Ethereum. So he was looking at the space from a technological and a creative perspective. And this is kind of where I think more creatives are going to need to go as we go more into this digital age. Creatives are going to need to understand how to use technology crypto, AI, other kind of technical innovations that happen in order to increase our own capabilities and our own creativity. And it seems a little contrary to the artist part of my brain and to most artists, because we want to make things with our hands. We want to play instruments in real life. We want to
Correct.
paint, so this idea of digital art and digital creativity is kind of hard to materialize, I will say.
Would you agree with the notion that in everything that you're saying, also for an artist, the embracing of this whole blockchain ecosystem, all of it, is also going to increase the sense of ownership?
Yes. And that's really, the ownership is the thing that I really grabbed me when I understood that digital assets and digital ownership means that you really own your own stuff. And nowadays, with streaming and with all these other ways where centralized companies are trying to take your IP and sell it as it's their own without really giving you any credit, or making way more money off of you than they give to you as an artist.
Yeah.
It's kind of necessary for the growth of the creative field, in my mind. We have to understand how to use this just for our own survival. That's part of my whole push with my writing and my education, is just trying to show creatives that just because you don't understand something doesn't mean that it doesn't have any value to you. That you kind of have to push yourself a bit to understand this, and you will see the benefits in very, very clear ways. But it just takes a little bit for you to understand something different and push yourself into this uncomfortable place just a bit. And then you will learn a lot and you will benefit directly.
And maybe let's be even more frank with this. It's push yourself to this uncomfortable place quite a bit. Because in your introduction, you mentioned that you decided to kind of, it's not all of a sudden, but let's call it all of a sudden, move to a different country, take on heads on a whole new industry and learning of the technology, show your path, show your journey, and share it with all kinds of people. And here you are, 3.5 years later, speaking about this in ways that most people can't. And you and I spoke when we were at the expo in Istanbul about the need to educate the marketplace. And one of our derivatives, one of our product services that we're developing vividly is really, really focused on that, creating a place where this, again, I'll call it a blockchain jungle, can be broken into small bites and pieces so that people can, at their own pace, and hopefully with the help of a smart assistant based on AI technologies. Let's not forget, right, that this is happening in parallel universe right now. AI and blockchain are changing practically, everything, including sometimes like whole industries. Yeah. So I really want to see more education, just simple ways for the experts to share with just the common user, because the adoption curve, my goodness, there's still such a long way to go. There's so many people out there who have not yet explored these ecosystems. You mentioned Ethereum. I know that there's a couple more that you are a big fan of. So I'm curious, Ethereum, you said 2014, that was the first kind of OG creator there for NFTs. What else is out there in the world of blockchain that you support, that you're interested in, and why?
Solana is probably where I spend most of my time, just because it was the first blockchain where I felt like there was a major focus across the board on really building things that have better UI and UX for non-technical engineer developer people. So I saw products like Phantom Wallet, which is now one of the most downloaded apps on the App Store in terms of fintech. It's because it makes so much sense for people to use. And because Solana's fees, the gas fees, the transaction fees are so small, it basically is free unless you're doing like tens of thousands of transactions all at once, which most normal people will never do. So as a company, they are focused on growing the tech first and growing the network first and making everything into this global network that just runs as efficiently and effective as possible. And one of the big negatives that people have about Solana is that it's been down a few times. But to me, those are problems that can be solved over time. As it grows, as they get more validators, as they increase with their validator clients, which is a whole nother thing where it's like different technologies running the same blockchain. They are trying to really fast to increase the throughput to make it faster and to make it 1,000,000 times cheaper. So over time, things with technology eventually become faster and cheaper. And so to me, it's like if this technology from the beginning is focused on the future, that's a good sign for me. And then also because of this usability, because of the cheapness, it allowed a lot of people from a lot of different places to come, because one of the biggest problems with Ethereum is every time you want to send a transaction, you have a fee that's based on the traffic on the network. So if it's a very heavy day where there's a lot of traffic and there's something that's exciting that a lot of people want to do, the gas fees get higher and higher and higher. And we saw in 2021, there were times where the gas fees were $1,000 or several $100s for one transaction. And on Solana, they hardly ever go above 0.0001 cent or something like that. You know, even if Solana gets to $1,000 one day, it will still be less than a penny for the transaction fees. So
it's phenomenal.
It makes sense to build on something like that for businesses, for creatives, for people who don't know what's going on, because when you first send a transaction, it's scary. You don't know what you're doing. You hope you have the wallet address right, and you're like, I don't know. So there's a lot of things you have to kind of set aside. But if you
Speaking of which, Kelly, may you just touched on something to the listeners out there, to the viewers out there. You dropped a couple of terms. You said gas fees, transaction fees, and now you're like, oh, the wallet addresses. Just explain why shouldn't we be afraid of, which is still a bit complex process, right, for certain transactions. But if you dig into it, is it really that complex? Like, just describe what the process currently is. If you see it going and evolving into an easier process, let us know. And then why shouldn't people be afraid of it? And is there anything that they can do to mitigate making certain mistakes when making crypto transactions?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of companies right now that are trying to make it easier for people to what's called on-ramp, where you connect your bank account to something where you can actually buy Solana. And then also to off-ramp, to send the crypto to cash to somebody or some other place. So there are people using email, like Gmail. You could use your Gmail to send crypto now if you have crypto in a wallet. So the way that I think about all of this, it's like if you're in the mall, I'm in the Solana mall, I want to buy stuff, but I need the soul. So where do I hold my soul? It's a digital thing. So you have to go get what's called a wallet. And it's usually either on computer, it's a browser extension, or on your phone, it's an app. And you have to go to something right now. You have to use something called a centralized exchange, which is Binance, Crypto.com, OKX, other things like that, where you can connect your bank account to that exchange to buy the crypto with dollars or euros or whatever. And then you take that from the account on that platform and you send it to what's called a hot wallet, which is like Phantom, MetaMask, Compass. There's a bunch of them. Backpack is another one. And so the wallet address is just the name of that wallet on the blockchain. So it just tells you you're sending this Solana to this wallet. So once you do all of that, then you can use your wallet to connect it to other platforms on the blockchain, other sites or their apps. and you can send that Solana from your wallet to them to buy something, to trade, to buy an NFT, to mint an NFT. And that's how, like, the very basic.
And it's safe,
intro.
right?
It is, as long as you are making sure that when you connect your wallet to a site, it's the real site. And so because there is a lack of regulation, because regulation always takes forever, legislation is a notoriously slow and laborious process, and crypto moves at the speed of light. So everything moves much faster. And I feel like eventually there will be much more regulation in the space, and there will be much more easier ways for people to see whether something is real or not. But for now, you have to be very vigilant, and you have to make sure that every time you connect your wallet, it's just something that you actually can verify and trust. It's real. It's not a fake. It's not some duplicate that someone's trying to scam you thinking that it's something else. And I have a whole list of scams and popular things that people do that are ways for people to make sure that they're not falling into any of those traps. But the number one thing is just make sure that you don't send anything, or you can do a little test. And here's why I like Solana, because with Ethereum, if you wanted to do a test to make sure that you're connecting to something and you're sending to something real, you would have to pay whatever the gas fee is at that point in time. So you can't send like 10 cents. You can, but that 10 cents will be a few dollars in transaction fees, or maybe 10 or 50 or 100. But with Solana, you don't need that. You can send that little bit, and then the transaction fee is very minimal.
So for those people that are new, that don't know, the best way to get into this is to test it out. And what you're saying is that because the gas fee, the transaction fee to initiate some sort of exchange of some amount of Solana, which can be put into a dollar or fiat currency equivalent, is minimal. So you go in, you test, you see that something works, and then it's 100% basically foolproof from there on.
Yeah, you can verify. We always trust but verify. We say that all the time.
Yeah.
Because you have to make sure on the other end that this thing went to where you sent it.
There are, blockchain scanners for that, correct? So you can, once a transaction is completed on one end, there is a way to go and check and make sure that the transaction went through, correct?
Yeah, on Solana, there's a few, but the main one that people use is Solana Sol Scan or Sol FM. Those two are the main ones. And every time you do a transaction in a wallet, there will be some link to the transaction itself. So you can usually click on that link, and then it'll take you straight to that transaction page where it tells you sent 0.1 Solana to this wallet at this time. And so you know exactly where it is at any time.
There you go. When you put it in these simple terms, it doesn't sound that scary. It's actually not much different from the times when the banking was going into the online banking. Our traditional, brick and mortar banking all of a sudden went online when the commerce went from retail and mall, physical brick and mortar location to online. The dot-com bubble, in the early 2000s. That's not that different. And people back then too were scared, and you would go to let's say a Bank of America, Wells Fargo page, and you would think that you were on the page, but it would be just a fake page. You would look at the URL, the actual address, and there would be something off about it, but not enough for your average user to understand that there's something different. So con artists are always going to be there, but what I see, and let me know if I'm wrong here, there are plenty of sheriffs. This whole blockchain industry is built. It's built into it that there are so many sheriffs out there that are looking out for the well-being of the ecosystem that it's just very hard to be a sustainable con artist, be a sustainable liar or faker. You will be found sooner or later.
They have to try really hard to obfuscate their transactions and stuff. And most of the people who do it, though, they don't do all that effort. So there is a process. And like you said, there are a lot of people who are constantly monitoring people of influence, people who say they're doing one thing just to make sure, like they publicly said they're doing this. Are they actually doing it?
Mm-hmm.
Because holding everyone accountable is a way to make people trust the space more and to build credibility. And that's something that I think everybody on blockchain should be focusing on. Because if you are a part of an ecosystem and you want people to use it, the first thing you need to do is get them to trust it. And otherwise, they won't even touch it. And building credibility and holding people accountable is something that also will just improve over time. Whether it's a government regulation or more legal entities getting into this space,
Mm-hmm.
or more people with authority and actual like enforcement, which is a whole nother branch of this ecosystem. But getting people to trust is the number one way to get people comfortable enough to put themselves in a place where they can even try something like this. And I do think that we're in a time in the world where every single person needs to be pushing themselves just a little bit, because the world as we knew it is completely changing with AI and crypto. Like you said, like AI and crypto will continue to blend together in increasingly more effective and efficient ways. And that will change the industry a lot, I'm sure, already. But I just want people to understand that you can't think of this as something that you're just going to easily be able to dive into and understand with one click or one button. You know, everything is kind of trying to put you in that mindset of one click, one button, it's done. You don't have to think about it. But if you really want to have ownership of your life and of your future and of digital assets that are only going to be increasing, then you really have to understand what's behind that. And that's why my framing of this space is through a narrative of science fiction space exploration, because you have to put your mind into, I'm going on a journey, place I've never been. I'm exploring this futuristic technology. And so I'm already kind of in the mindset of like, I'm going to see things I don't know. I'm going to be looking at things that I don't understand. And I'm going to be using tools that for the first time that you don't have a lot of background or schools about. There is no school for blockchain. So we're all kind of learning on our own. And what I know is going to happen is more people will build those schools and build those educational things.
Well said. Just resonates in so many accounts. We are building ourselves that type of institution, a school, a college, a university. We call it the Vividly Academy. Really, really excited to have people like you as well as experts, as curators, as people that can lead seminars, webinars, create courses, certify people in certain aspects, help them evolve, and also along the way monetize, right? The education is something that in a traditional sense, think about how much money people pay for traditional education around the world. I mean, the US pricing for education is insane, hence the whole crisis with student debt. Here we're talking about a whole new way of educating yourself. Just in general, there's an ecosystem that is being developed as we speak. There's communities for each network. There's just all kinds of online resources that are becoming more and more available. Podcasts like today's podcast, I'm sure quite a few people can benefit from listening to this conversation alone. Like, honestly, what you're saying is coming from a person who isn't a tech geek. This is a gentleman who in 3+ years went from, know on the surface to being in it. And that's part of the game, as you say, in the journey. The journey is you got to be on the court with this, or you got to be in the swimming pool. Like, you can sit by the pool with an instructor, with the best, most amazing, the smartest ever trainer and coach, and talk about swimming and the technique and all of that. But until you're in the water, you're not learning anything. The intellectual knowledge does not matter. Applied knowledge is what matters. So whoever's building platforms or in ecosystems where you can get the knowledge intellectually, but then apply it and then see the benefit, be able to monetize some of that in some shape or form, get the sense of ownership for real. I've seen this with the basketball industry. I'll call it an industry where the whole ownership theme rose up in the last couple of years, and it's made tremendous differences to now many players become, part owners of the teams and things like that. Before that, it wasn't like that. Like you were saying about streaming services before, Spotify's of the world, great technology that came around, except as an artist, you can't make a living. It's only the select few. And I think the world of blockchain is changing that in the way it is redistributing the economy, the dollars or yens or euros or bitcoins that are floating around are becoming more and more available for anybody who is willing to do what you're doing. It's all for grabs. So having that said, anything about, my comments, and then I'm curious, what's your personal journey moving forward like? What do you see? What are you paying attention to? What types of technologies? Just talk a little bit about, some of the interesting maybe projects that you're paying attention to. Where do you see your own future? And any remarks and comments about the industry and its future as well.
I agree with you that the idea that really inspired me was that the possibility of collective ownership and collective action with blockchain, because there are things called DAOs, which are decentralized autonomous organizations. And that's like a long term, but it's basically its most basic sense. It can be thought of as a co-op. You can have a company where all the employees are part owners, and you can also have people who are investing from the outside have a vote into the direction of the company, so they can be pulled along the journey with the company's growth. And as an investor, as a contributor, as a customer, they are a part of the journey from the very beginning to wherever it goes, and they have a part, a say, some sort of influence on that direction in whatever small way. To me, that was amazing. And I felt like it would inspire a lot of companies and a lot of employees to work with the companies who do this, because they want people who are the most motivated, the most focused, the most driven. And I said, wow, okay, this really can help people find their own empowerment, their own ownership of their work, whatever it is. Even if you don't do anything in tech or finance, if you find a way to incorporate this into your drink company, into your sports company, into whatever, like it can be put into every single thing. And so my view on the future is, I hope that I can help people understand how this helps their businesses from the business owner's perspective, why the employees would want to be a part of something like that, because it helps them have more ownership and more motivation to work, because their work is directly affecting their financial gain, the value of their assets. I also really enjoy that whole aspect of thinking about a future where we are part owners in every company that we interact with, just because they have an NFT or they have a token or they have some other kind of digital asset.
Amen to that.
You can have a part of that. Like if everyone in the world who uses Amazon today, if they had a way to buy an NFT of Amazon's that, like for Prime or something, that gave them some small revenue that the Prime program made, everyone would want to buy those NFTs. Everyone would want to have a piece of that. And so I feel like we will see companies come out of this sector, show that it works, and that this actually does inspire a lot of growth, a lot of revenue, a lot of sales, loyal customers. And then the bigger companies will eventually like adopt some of those things into whatever they think fits their business model, or the companies that come out of the space will replace those companies because they are the ones really inspiring. Like there's this ideology called too big to care now. And to me, blockchain is the aspect, the opposite of that. It's like, get people to care, get people to be on your side because they're a part of the team, even as just a consumer of the product, and get them to get a benefit from your growth because they're a supporter of you in a direct fiscal, financial, or even like physical way. There's an example with this company called Claynosaurs. They make these clay dinosaurs, and they started as an NFT company, and their goal was to create the Pixar of Web3. And what they meant by that was, yes, we're going to make videos, we're going to make characters out of these 3D dinosaurs that we made. We're going to build a world for them to live in. We're going to create a game that you can use on your phone that uses AR and VR, kind of like Pokemon Go, sort of, with RPG elements, like an actual game. And then we're going to make short form and long form content to build out the characters, to build out the world, to introduce people to this world they're building, exactly like Toy Story or Jurassic Park or any of the movie series that we love. And they just won 13 different awards at this major award ceremony called Collision Awards against Pixar, Disney, Universal Studios, Paramount Pictures. Like, they won so many awards because they were able to galvanize their community to get them to vote and to promote this product and to show people like, wow, they built a solid core community that really was active and engaged and even went in voting on this like award thing that most people have never even heard of unless you work in the VFX industry. Right. So they got people from outside of the industry to be engaged enough for this company to win and compete against some of the biggest companies in the world. And to me, that's like a very clear example of why this ecosystem has so much benefit to the consumers, to the businesses, to everybody involved, and is very clear about the benefits, that this is something that is, you can see it has a direct impact on the way that everyone else looks at this IP as well, too. Oh, they won a bunch of awards. Now I should maybe start paying attention, you know? And so I think over time, we'll see more and more of this kind of occurring where the communities are so strong because people feel that emotional resonance. They have this identity that is a part of the growth. And whether that's an individual person and their own growth with their own brand, or whether it's a company that you like the products, you like what they're building, you want to be a part of their journey. And I can't see us going back to a world where that isn't a thing. Because why would you use a product if you didn't have some other ancillary benefit to using this product in a direct way?
So a lot of what you're saying as well has implications, ramifications for how the brands interact with their audiences. Brands, I use that word broadly. Businesses, companies that are building services, apps, products, digital, physical, doesn't matter, right? The trend that you're pointing to is that the community of, we used to call them consumers and still call quite a few sources and people still call us consumers. I don't like to be called consumer, right? Like, although I consume stuff, but to get this general term that, consumer economy, we consume, especially in the US, we're like consume. We're users. We're not just users, but we are getting smarter. Internet has given us ways to get smarter quicker. ChatGPT and the likes have gotten us the ability to get more specific and concise answers, bypassing traditional advertising models. The world of advertising needs to pay attention to what's happening in the world as well. But the brands have an opportunity to create an absolute raving fans, or they'll go kaput. They'll go out of existence. Netflix once tried to sell themselves to Blockbuster, and Blockbuster laughed at them. Too big to care. Like you said, right? Too big to care. It's like, who are you? Who's laughing now?
Yeah.
And we can look at these cases throughout history. There's been quite a few of these where the emerging technologies, they're too small. Well, every big company was small. So I think to your point, even Solana as an ecosystem, it's big, but it's still small. The space is growing bigger. There's exponential amount of growth available. And the invitation here is for everybody, regardless of where you are globally, to get in. Now, I have two more questions and we will be wrapping up for today, Kelly. One, you are not in the US right now, right? You're in Turkey. Tell us a little bit about why you are there and what do you see in the Turkish market? Just kind of your take on Turkey, blockchain, what's happening there overall, and the potential that you see. And then any final remarks, comments from yourself. And then please let us know also at the end where we can find you, where the audience can follow you, ways to keep paying attention to what you're doing, because I think everybody who is on this podcast should at the very least follow Kelly and pay attention to this humble entrepreneur that is willing to spend his time to educate everybody in this very easy format.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I got into crypto here in Istanbul, and for a while I was just focused on the English speaking market. That's my native language. And I saw that because of the English side, most of the focus in that world on Discord and X, where the crypto companies communicate, is focused on the US, North America, Australia, Western Europe, like UK. And I saw that there are a lot of people here in Turkey that use crypto. They buy and sell. They have two very large exchanges here that are specifically working with Turkish people. And then I started to see Binance had a branch here, and OKX started to ramp up their operations here as well, another big exchange. And I started getting involved with the businesses here and the organizations here that are pushing blockchain. And I saw that every single college in Turkey has a blockchain group of students who are wanting to build, wanting to learn. There are 10 million active users of crypto, and that number, like when you increase it out to casual, maybe they have one wallet somewhere. It's almost like 40 million people. So it's a huge, and the population is only 90 million something people. So it's a huge amount of people who, because of inflation, because of the way that this is access to euros and dollars for them, it's a way for them to put their money into something else that, at least in cycles, will go up over time. But I saw how engaged they were, and then people started asking me to judge pitch competitions and hackathons and to come speak at universities and art galleries even. And when I saw that the old professional artists who are in their 50s and 60s were coming to listen to me talk about NFTs and taking notes, that was a huge moment for me, because I realized, wow, they really are looking for something different.
Yeah.
And they have this hunger and desire to make it work and to figure it out that I didn't really see in the Western world, because I saw that there's so many options. People feel comfortable with their government. They trust their banks for the most part, even though it's questionable. But they're so used to the dollar being stable that to them, a financial system that exists outside of the dollar world doesn't really have any purpose to them. So I started to see just the differences in the culture, the differences in their growth. Turkey has a very large demographic of young people who are tech savvy. And when you go around here, all of the menus are QR codes. Everything has a scanner somewhere, and they even have trains and metros that are driverless. And people don't really know that much about Turkey in the Western world. I myself knew absolutely nothing about Istanbul except for what I learned from the 1400s and the Ottoman Empire days in history class. So there's no concept of how they've incorporated technology into their daily lives. And so to me, it's like a place that's going to be a hub for crypto. And I'm already seeing major blockchains like Solana and Sui and Ethereum and Bitcoin. They have conferences here. They have people coming here. They have builders. So to me, it's going to be this bridge between West and East again, but just in a digital way. And
amazing.
I get really excited about it because one of the main things why I stayed here was because I want to help be that bridge. And my partner, she is from Syria. And so we are also talking to the Arabic community as well, and kind of making people from all of the sectors that we can reach understand how this brings everyone together. And in Web3, as we call crypto, it doesn't matter where you're from. It just matters what can you do and how are you doing it?
I love that.
When you can do that in a positive way, in a constructive way, then people will gravitate towards you, and you just have to be consistent and show what you're doing. When I was writing, I didn't have any idea what I was doing. I was just sharing my experience. And then it kind of grew into this big thing where I have 25,000 people as an audience for my blog that I started just writing a few sentences. It just didn't even know what I was really saying, just sharing what was in my heart. And it's been really cool to see that response from, it doesn't matter what degree you have, where you come from, it's how can you communicate your ideas and how can you implement them in a real way that actually helps people and you show the benefits of whatever you're doing in this space. So for me, my main things are X. I'm Crypto Kelly on X. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Discord as Crypto Kelly too. And I never used Twitter or Discord before getting into this space ever. But now I see this is just the mode that people communicate, and this is where the information is. So if you're trying to find what is going on, where are these things going, X and Discord are the two main sources of information. So for me, that's where I had to be. I had to build the presence there. I had to write the content there, and I had to share my perspective there because that's where the people who were seeking that were.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. This has been an incredible 1 hour of insights, of just pure, genuine knowledge, and just sharing from you. I feel very inspired, especially by your latest remarks about how this brings everybody together. And that's the whole point, is we want to bring more people into this industry. Businesses, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs around the world have the ability to make a living in this gigantic, blockchain jungle, as I refer to it on our part, as well as the company YOLO, which we refer to as also YOLOverse, are going to be doing a lot of things based on the feedback that we're getting from the community and people like you, Kelly, in order to be a helpful resource and a tool, and just lower the entry bar into this industry, invite more people, and just be useful for people. So thank you very much, Kelly, for your time. For the audience out there, stay tuned for future episodes. Kelly will for sure be back, and we will dig into things a little bit deeper. Stay tuned for future episodes of On-Chain Attention. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.